So today's daf is Chaf Gimel. We're going to start with Masechet Shesholchu Lechoni Hamagel. And you'll see that about 10 lines down for top. Tanu Rabbanu, we learned in the Brisa Pamachas Yotza Rov Adar, the most of the month of Adar passed. Below Yardu Gishamim, and there wasn't enough rain. Rains were not coming down. Sholchu Lechacham Yisrael sent Shluchim Lechoni Hamagel, and they knew that he was such a great saint, a great tzaddik, that they knew that his Chasidus, he was the Chasid Gadol in that generation, the Baal Maisim Tovim. They were absolutely sure that his tefillah on behalf of Klal Yisrael would be accepted on high. His pal the Yardu Gisham. They asked him, please daven, so that the Gisham will come down. His palel, he davened, v'lo Yardu Gisham. And Choni saw that his prayers were not hearkened to, were not responding. Uga. He dug a circle around him in the ground. The Omen B'tochan, he stood in the middle of the circle. He had seen before his time, at the time of Chavakuk HaNavi, that he also had created a circle in the ground, and he stood inside of it. And he declared that he wouldn't go out of the circle until God responded to his prayer. Shenemar in the second chapter of Chavakuk, Al Mishmarti E'emoda Va'es Yatzva Al Matzar V'atzaper Liros Ma Yedaber Bi Uma Oshiv Al Pachachti. That Chavakuk HaNavi created this tzura, this round circle. And it made it like a jail, so to speak. And he entered into this jail, and he declared that he would not go out of there until HaKadosh Baruch Hu would respond to his supplications. And Ma'alav lahashiv li'osa sheboim lefanim v'tano midos shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he asked God to please give him a response to those who came and claimed, well, why is it that God with his midos, and yet we see the success of the Rishonim? Now we get back to Choni Hamagel. The Omar Lefana. Choni says in front of Rebbeinu Shalom Shalom Banecha Samu Pneichem Pneim Olai. Your children have looked towards me, and they are relying on my prayers. And why? Shani kiven bayis lefanecha. I'm like a member of your household. I always go in. I always go out. I have like free license to come in and come out. And his kavanah was that Chachmi Yisrael turned to him because not his greatness necessarily, but because he's Motzui Tadeh L'fnei Melech. And what happened as a result? Oh yeah, now Choni adds an oath. He says, Nishbani b'shimcha gadol she'ni zaz mikan ad she'trachim al banecha. I will not leave this circle until you bring down the rains. But the rains came down in little drops, raindrops. And the student said to Choni Hamagel, Rebbe, Re'inucha v'lo nomos. Do you want us to see you? You don't want us to die. In other words, please do more, because this is not going to save us. It seems like the only reason that these rains came down in such small amounts, which is not significant for us, and won't do the job, is in order that you should be able to leave that circle without violating your oath. Omar. So now Choni comes back and he turns to the Ribono Shalom. He says, Lo kach sha'alti, this is not what I was asking for. Ela gishme boros Sichin Uma Oros, but rather enough of a quantity of water that would fill up all of the cisterns, all the caves, and the boros, which would give us water for drinking. Yardu Bizaf. As a result of this second round of prayers, the rains came down in torrents. Achekol, Tipa V'Tipa, each drop of rain was so large, like the opening of a barrel. B'shiru chachamim she'ein tipa pchusa milok. And the Chacham evaluated that each tipa was at least a minimum of a log. Amrulo Talmidov, Rebbe Reinuchav Lo Nomus. You don't want us to die from these rains. Kimdumim Anu, we think that Ein Gitshamim Yordu, that perhaps these rains are coming to destroy the world. Please pray and supplicate on our behalf that we shouldn't die from the impact of these rains. Omar, Choni, Lefanov turns to the Rebbeinu Shem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lo Kach Shalti, that's not what I was asking for. Ella, what was I asking for? Gishmei Ratzon, Bracha, Unidava. I need a shefa of Gishamim that would come down, Benachas, which would be a bracha that should saturate the ground and should be effective in bringing about a situation that the ground could produce its grains. And now the rains fell exactly as they should. And again, there was an abundance of rain. The people had to climb up to a higher level because of the kshavim, because the low land levels were flooded. Amrullah, the Talmidim said to Choni Amangel, Rebbe, Kishem Shispalalta, Sheyerdu Kachis Palel, V'yelchu Lahem. Just like you prayed that the rain should come down, please pray that they should stop coming down. Amalahem, Choni Amagel says to his Talmidim, Kach Mekublani, I have a Kabbalah from my Rebbe, my Rebbeim, Shein Mispalam Al Rov HaTova. We don't ask a Tova from Hashem should stop, but rather we should try to somehow tolerate it and suffer with it. And if I cannot pray for the termination of the rains, however, afal pichen heviu li pach hodah, par hodah. Since the Geshamim now that are coming down are bad for the world, not good for the world, they're not beneficial, rather they're destructive. Therefore, bring me a cow, and I'm going to be misvad. I'll recite vidui on the cow, and al ribuya tova lahakriv kishlom. And now the par becomes a ribui tova, meaning it's a background for adding extra hodah and gratitude to Hashem when we makriv shlomim. And it says that to confess a sin of asking for the abundant rain to cease. In other words, it seems like Choni at this point is willing to violate this rule and pray, but we're going to have to bring a korban shlom on which we could say vidu, recite vidu. So it's either vidu or it's hodah and thanksgiving. Eviulo par hodah. They brought him this korban for hodah, which can either means vidu or thanksgiving. Samach shteyadav olav. He places his two hands on the top of the animal, on the head of the animal. The Amalafanu, what he says, Rebbeinu Shalom, Amcha Yisrael shall face him in Mitzrayim. Einam yecholim lo berov tova v'lo berov paradius. And just like at the time it's Mitzrayim, they couldn't tolerate too much bad things. After the exodus from Mitzrayim, they went into the Midbar and they were tested, and they failed certain tests, the Meimora, the Meimriva, and other tests that they failed, and you got angry at them. The Einam Yecholim Lamo, they cannot withstand your anger, divine anger. And Hishpata Aleim, when you gave them Tova, you gave them great things, like for example, you read a Haman and the Slav. Einam Yecholim Lamod, when there was too much, they couldn't tolerate that either. Like for example, with regard to the Slav, it says Habotzo benu benin shineim terem yikares v'yach Hashem chora ba'am v'yach Hashem ba'am maka rabba ma'od. So you see that Klal Yisrael are not able to withstand not Rov Tova, not Rov Peronios, and now they cannot stand and tolerate Rov Tova. Please bring about the termination of these rains, these heavy torrents. And olam. So at this point, there'll be, a calm, comfortable situation for the world. Yad noshva ruach v'nispazra ovim v'zorcha cham v'yotzam l'sad v'evilem kmeim u'pitrios. So immediately, the clouds were dispersed by the wind, and the sun came out, and the people went out to the fields, and they brought home kmeim u'pitrios, different types of mushrooms. Now, what was the response to these prayers of Choni on the part of the Chachamim? Shimon ben Shetach, who was the Nasi, he sent a message to Choni Amagel, Il-Moli Choni Atofnaf, the fact that you're such an Onam Gadol, goes Rani Olecha Nidui, I would put you into a Nidui. Nidui is a punishment of a kind of an excommunication for someone who's Pogam, a covered Rav. And you deserve that Nidui because you were Matriach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the words, Lo kach sha'alti, this is not what I asked for. And the covet of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is no less than the covet you have for a Rav. And therefore you deserve Nidui, because this is not an honorable way that you talk to the Rimon Shalom and say, Lo kach sha'alti. Furthermore, She'ilu shanim kishnei Eliyahu, if we were in a time period like that of Eliyahu and Navi, where Kadosh Baruch Hu gave to Eliyahu maftechos gishamim b'yado shel Eliyahu, he transferred the reins and the control and the keys to bring down the gishamim into the hands of Eliyahu and Navi. Eliyahu and Navi took a shvua that there shouldn't be rains unless they want the rains to fall. In Yirtzu B'kach. And Kmochen Yitochen Shaf B'shonim Elu Yimsar Kadosh Baruch Hu Maftecha Shel Gisham B'Yado Shalecha Mitzadikim. So too, there's another period of time, and that's our period of time of Choni, when it's possible that a Kadosh Baruch Hu will transfer the keys of Gishamim into the hands of one of the tzaddikim, and he'll take a shvuah. And you took a shvuah in the name of God that you're not going to go out of the eagle, out of his circle, unless the Gisham will come down. Now God took a shvuah that he would not bring down the rains. You took a shvuah that the rains will come down. So now there's definitely no doubt about it. One of these shvuahs is going to be a false shvuah, and there'll be a chilul Hashem as a result. So that's what Shimon ben Shetach says, that there are two reasons why you deserve to be put into Nidui. First, you didn't speak Mechubed HaKadosh Baruch Hu when you pray, when you said Lo kach sha'alti. And furthermore, by taking a shvuah, you have now created a situation where there'll definitely be chilul shvuah, chilul Hashem. However, says Shimon ben Shetach, what can I do to you? Even though Atom is chate, you're not behaving properly with regard to God. Nevertheless, what we see is that the hashgacha is on your side. God actually fulfills your will. And at the end, he brought down the rains in moderation. And it's like a ben shemischate al oviv. He's misbehaving. A son is misbehaving vis-a-vis his father. Yet his father, paradoxically, fulfills his will. For example, take me to the bathhouse so I can get a hot bath. Or he comes back again to his father and he says, now take me to a different Beis HaMerchatz and wash me off with cold water. And his father will, in both cases, be molech and will take him where he wants. Another example is where the son says to his father, Tenli agozim, give me walnuts, shkevim, almonds, afarsakim, peaches, rimonim, pomegranates, and Venosin, his father, will grant him all these requests. And this is a mechal that you asked for rains, and when the rains began to come in a small amount, you went ahead and you now requested rains, b'shefa, and then again, you weren't happy with the rains that came down, and you asked for Gishmei, Bracha, Ratzon, and Dava, constantly coming back and making demands, so to speak, on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Alecha Kasav Omer, and yet God responds and gives you whatever you want, just like the father gives to his son what he wants. And that's the pasuk in Mishlech of Gimel, Yismach Aviv v'imecha v'sagel yoladetecha. Yismach Avicha is a reference to Avicha Shebashamayim. V'imecha is Knesset Yisrael. V'sagel yoladetecha, these are Aviv v'imo sheholadetiu. So I'm not going to declare and decree a nidui, because as far as you're concerned, apparently the way you speak to God is not considered atochas form. It's not so improper. Klapi Maila, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu responded in turn. Torah Rabbanan, we learned in the Bryce. Ma sholchu b'nei lishkas hagozis lechoni amagel. What did the Chachmei Sanhedrin who sat in the Lishkas Hagozis, what message did they transmit to Choni Amagel? After this whole story, in which he was mispal for Yeridas Kishomim and for the cessation of the Yeridas Kishomim. And they quoted the Pasuk in Iyov, Alecha Nemar B'Pasuk. Regarding you, the Pasuk says, V'sigzar Omer V'yakom Loch V'al Drachecha Noga or. You will pronounce a decree, and it will be fulfilled for you, and light will shine on your ways. So now the Gemara darshans the pasuk with regard to Choni, V'sigzar Omen, which literally translates, you will pronounce a decree and it will be fulfilled for you. Ato gazarta bilamata, your decree was here below on earth that it should rain. And the Holy One, blessed be He, fulfills you your word from heaven above. Al drachecha naga or, and light will shine on your ways. Dor shaya ofel he'arta b'tfilasecha, a generation that was in darkness, in great distress because of the lack of rain, you brighten through your prayers. And the pasuk continues and says, Ki hishpilu vatomer gava. If they have fallen low, you have said that they should be uplifted. In other words, you found your generation in a low state, and yet you felt safely about promising them better times. God will fulfill your promise. And one whose eyes are downcast, he will save. A generation that was laid low by its sin, you save them from death through your prayers. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu's response was, Yemalet I Noki. He will deliver one who is not innocent. Dar Shelo Hoya Noki Milateto B'Tfilasecha, a generation that was not innocent, and yet you deliver them through your prayers. V'nimlat B'Bar Kapecha, and he will be delivered because of the purity of your hands. Milato B'Maise Yodecha Habrurim, you have delivered your generation through the clear, pure deeds of your hands. Rav Yochanan, Kol Yom Shalosuk Tzadik, during the entire lifetime of Choni Amagel, Hoya Mitztayer Al Mikra Zeh, he was always perturbed by one particular pasuk that David HaMelech says in Tehillim with regard to Shivas Yisraeli Artzam after Golus, and the Golus from the destruction of Vais Rishon till Vais Sheni was 70 years. Shir Malus B'Shuv Hashem and Shiva Sina Yinu Kecholmin. That during this 70-year period, waiting, as it were, to return to Eretz Yisrael from the goals of Bavel, and at the end, they returned with Simcha and Tov. And it seemed like that 70-year period with all its sorrows nevertheless passed by like a dream. 70-year dream. Omar. So Choni Hama'agel was perplexed by this pasuk. A chalom is something that you dream of while you're sleeping. And Nika, the noyim shivim shnin becholma. Do we have a person who could actually sleep for 70 years consecutively, continuously? Yom achad havi ozu biruch. And in fact, this took place in Choni Hamagel himself. One day, Choni Hamagel was on the road, out on the journey. He met a person who was planting a charuva tree, what we call boxer. Amalei, and Choni turned to this person and says, "Hi, kama shonim toy. How long will it take for this tree that you're planting, this carob tree, to produce its fruit, its first fruit?" Amalei, shivim shana, will take 70 years. Amalei, so Choni asked him in amazement, is it so clear to you, the chaya shivim shanim, that you'll be able to live another 70 years? Implying that you're not going to live another 70 years and you're doing such tircha to plant this tree. What for? Amalei hai gavra. That person responds to Choni Hamagel, Alma becharuva ashkechata. I found this world. It was when I came into this world, there were trees, carob trees, because our forefathers planted those trees. So just like my forefathers planted trees for me that I could benefit from the fruits of those trees, Shasli Lami Livroi, I too am planting trees so that my children, even though I know that I won't live long enough, they will benefit from the fruits of the trees. And after Choni Hamagel completed this dialogue with that person, Yosef, he sat down, and he broke bread, oscillation, so he fell asleep, Nim, Yoshan, and while he was sleeping, a hadrale mishunisa, around him a boulder arose, and he chasi me'ena, and the boulder covered him over, so that he was concealed, no one could see him. V'nim, and Choni slept for Shivim Shana for 70 years, a Jewish sleeper, right? He come, 70 years later he wakes up, nobody knew where he was, they all assumed he had long died. He met a certain person, that he was actually collecting the fruits from that carob tree that was planted 70 years earlier. Amalei, Atu Vishtalse, did you plant this tree? Amalei, Bar Breana, I am the grandson of the person who actually planted this tree. Amalei, Choni Hamagel said to that person that if this carob tree was planted for a period of time that only 70 years later would produce fruit, Shmamina, I could derive the conclusion that from the fact that this carob tree now, 70 years later, after I had met the grandfather who planted it, is now producing fruit, I must conclude that I had slept for 70 years. And Chazal Lechamre, Choni Hamagel saw his donkey that he had taken with him on the road, this Yaladle Ramche Ramche, that had Vlodos and Vlode Vlodos. Also the basic. Choni goes back to his house. He comes to his house, Omer Lahu, He asks the members of household, Brei de Choni Amagel Mikayim. Is the son of Choni Amagel still alive? Omrule, they responded to him, Brei Lesa Bar Brei Isa. His son is long gone, but his grandson is still alive. Omalahu, Choni Amagel says to the members of his house, Ano Choni Amagel. I am myself from Choni Amagel. Oh, him knew, nobody paid attention to him. Hazel, the Beit Medrash, so Choni goes to the base Medrash. Sham Inu Rabbanan de Ka'amri, overhears the Chacham saying one to another while they're learning, Mehirin Shmaitetin Kivishnei Choni Amagel. This sugya that we're learning is clear. It gives light as if we had studied it directly from the mouth of Choni Amagel. Shahaya metaretz umevaira magia lono es hasugi yofi yofi. Techiavi ayla be midrasha. When Choni would go into the base medrash, called kucha davi le rabbanon havi mefarikli. Any question that the Chacham had, any problem that they saw, Choni himself would give them an answer. Sometimes he would change the girsa. Amalahu. So Choni now turns to the Talmidei Chacham, no ninu. I am Choni Amagel. Lo emnu. They didn't believe him. Lo avdi le yikar k'de boile. And they didn't give him the respect that he deserved. They didn't see that he deserved any respect. They didn't see that he was involved in any ma'asim tovim like they saw by Choni Amagel. Cholesh daite. And Choni now fell apart psychologically. And boy, Rachmi umis. And he prayed to Hashem that God should take his neshama, even though it was before his man, and his prayers were answered on high, and he died. It's so critical for a person to have chaverim that respect him, chaverim from whom he can learn and he can teach. And if the chaverim are not nogin bo kavod, then it's better that he die. And therefore, when Choni Amagel saw that Talmidei Chacham were not respecting him, he asked to die. The Gemara tells us about Abba Chilkiah bar Berei de Choni Amagel. Abba Chilkiah was none other than the grandson of Choni Amagel, Mitzterich. He also had he inherited in his DNA from his grandfather the ability to pray for rain. Ki Mitztarich Alma Lemitra, when the world desperately needed rains, then the Chacham would send a shluchim to Chilkiah, Rabbi Chilkiah, Boy Rachmi would ask for Rachmanus, V'yasi Mitra, and he would bring down the rain. Zilmut Kala one time, Mitzvah Alma Mitra, Shadar Rabbanan Zugal Rabbanan Gabe. The Chacham sent two Talmidei Chachamim to Abba Chilkiah, Lemi Boy Rachmi, that he should pray and ask for Rachmi to Nesei Mitra to bring down the rains. Ozul Abeisei, the Shluchim went to the house of Abba Chilkiah. V'losh Kachu, they didn't find him. Apparently he was avoiding. Azul B'daber, they went. The Shluchim went out to the fields to look for him. Ashkechua the Avika Rafik. They saw that he was ma'ader in the sada, right? He was digging in the fields. Yoevile shlama. They gave him shalom.